I am so ready for spooky season, and so is the mystery journal. For this bullet journal theme, I really wanted to make something that was both pretty and witchy. It was partially inspired by my own October theme from last year, but also a little bit different. We've got waterfall tabs, we've got lots of celestial themes. I've cut some regular tabs into the weeklies as well. It's all looking a little magical. Hi, I'm Erin, thanks for clicking on my video. Allow me to introduce all the things I used to make this theme. All of these will be linked in the description, starting with this notebook from KUMA Stationery and Crafts. This is their Astral Travel A5 journal. I'm teaming it up with the Moonlit Blush washi tape set from Notebook Therapy. Originally, I planned to use this in my own journal for October, and then I just couldn't wait that long. I actually only ended up using the two leftmost washis of these ones, the black and the pink one there. An array of sticker sheets from Lace and Whimsy Studio. These ones have Soft Magical Girl written all over them. They are perfect for this theme. These gold gilded pink candelabra PET stickers from JOURNALSAY, and these calendar washi tapes from Maisie Lane Co. The number washi especially is designed to match a 5mm dot grid, so that makes bullet journaling really easy. Just before we start using all these beautiful things, I want to tell you a bit about Skillshare, the kind sponsors of this video and the first place I turn when I'm keen to start a new hobby or have a specific creative problem I need help solving. I've had this gorgeous velvet fabric for a few months and I've been itching to make it into a cute little skirt fit for a witchy woman, but I'm only a baby sewist, and when I pulled out my patterns I was instantly overwhelmed, like what am I even looking at? I headed straight to Skillshare and found not just the perfect class for me, but also an entire learning path called Sew Custom Clothing from Scratch with Robin Burgess. The second class in this learning path is all about how to read and understand patterns, which is exactly what I needed in that moment, but I've still got 3 more classes ahead of me to help me continue on this sewing journey. Also, I'm not quite finished with the skirt yet, but it's looking so cute already. This is why I'm such a huge fan of Skillshare. It's the biggest online learning community for creatives, which means amongst their literal thousands of classes, the chances are high that you can find a class about exactly what you're wanting to learn, whatever your skill level. We're talking crafts, we're talking music, we're talking photography and creative writing and so much more. And if you're a creative pro, there are classes to help you grow in all the businessy areas that come along with that too, like social media and productivity and marketing. If you want to get really in-depth, their learning paths, like the one I'm following, are curated sequential class collections designed to take you on a learning journey to help you master your chosen skill. Skillshare have also just leveled up with some new features like new class topics and smarter class categories. Plus, now when you sign up, Skillshare will ask you to share a little bit about your interests so they can present you with class recommendations tailored specifically to your goals. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today. Thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Now let's cut some waterfall tabs and some regular tabs. In fact, we're going to do the regular tabs first. I'm starting by turning all the way to the back of this setup, so the very last page that I'm going to be using. I'm placing a cutting mat behind that page, and I'm using a metal ruler and a Stanley knife, a craft knife, an X-Acto knife, whatever they call it where you're from, to make an incision, if you will, 1 dot grid space in from the right side of the page. To make the actual tabs, you'll have to do a little bit of maths. I knew I wanted 5 tabs, 1 for each of the weeklies in my October setup, so I worked out that my tabs would be 7 dot grid spaces tall, with 1 blank dot grid space in between each one. And for purposes of measuring those, I've also included that extra undotted space at the top and bottom of the page and counted that as though it is a space. Then I'm just being careful as I remove the pieces of the page to leave the space where I want each of the tabs to go. So I started from the bottom at the back, moving up to the top at the front of the weeklies. And I'm actually going to remove some of the paper from the right side of the tab too, so it's only 1 dot grid space wide once it's all said and done. We'll get to that. And I'm planning to make the edges of my tabs angled as well, which means they're going to show a little bit of the page that sits behind. Once we cut off this top little corner, this is kind of how all the tabs will look together. We'll come back and finesse them a little bit, but for now let's move on to the waterfall tabs and do all the cutting in one go. So we're still continuing to move backwards through what's going to be the October pages, and each time I cut a new page, I'm taking off 2 more dot grid spaces versus the page that I cut before. This way, when you go back to the very first page of this collection of pages in the journal, when they're all turned to the right, all of these pages will stack sort of on top of each other and show just a little sliver of the one that is behind them. So here's how it looks before we do any decoration. You can see we've got the tabs on the far side and then less and less paper for each page going back towards the front of the setup. So you really need to know exactly how many pages you want for a setup like this before you jump in and start cutting. Now let's finesse these tabs over here for the weeklies. So I'm just cutting off the outside of the paper from where the first row of dots starts. This way we're going to see some of the paper underneath. And the tabs will be nicely protected by the pages on either side of them throughout the book too, so they shouldn't get too raggedy even if you're using them to flip between pages. Now that they're all cut, we can decorate them, which is kind of my favourite part. When I'm doing straight waterfall tabs like this, washi tape just seems like the most simple and straightforward way to do it, and I had this beautiful set, so why not use it? I knew I wanted the thickest washi tape on the side of my first waterfall tab, so I jumped in and laid that one down straight away, but I'm actually just auditioning the rest of them, moving them around until I can see a pattern that I like the look of before I commit the rest of the washis to the edges of the page. Ideally, I want each of the washi tapes to look markedly different to the one it sits next to, so I'm going for one that's got quite a bold gold gilding next to one that has a very subtle gold gilding. They're similar colours, but they're not exactly the same, and then we'll do a black one for the next one so we've got that contrast. I also lined the back of the previous tab when I did that last one. That's totally optional, that is going to eat into your page space, but it is a nice little extra effect. I won't do it for all of these, but I will do it for a few. I have a few clear PET tapes in that same set, but I was trying to avoid those as much as I could for this section, so rather than adding a different washi here, what I thought I'd do is take advantage of this wide one. I've stuck a length of it down onto my cutting mat, and I'm using my Stanley knife and my metal ruler again to cut it in half so I can pretend that this is a whole separate, thinner piece of washi tape. This length of black washi here is actually going down on the first of the weeklies. So just to the right at the top of this page is where our tab sits. I still wanted this because it was going to be visible to look like it blended with the waterfall tabs, but we will jump back in and add some washi tape to those little tabs as well in a second. Because the page behind was going to be revealed, I thought it would be nice to have some washi tape back here on the last one as well. So now the tabs have a shiny metallic pink backdrop, which is really fun. I'm also using some more washi tape to stick over the top of the tabs. I'm wrapping it around to the back of the tab this time as well, so they're fully enveloped. Once all those tabs have their washi tape casing on them, we will come back and cut them on the corners so that they make a bit of a diagonal line. I wanted to wait until I had the washi tape on to do that so that the cuts would be really nice and clean. This one's actually just a really narrow PET tape, so rather than wrapping it around, I'm just adding a fresh layer of it on the back. Check out how good these tabs all look together. I love the colours. Now we just need to cut off all of the extra tape. Sometimes a really easy way to do this is to get your cutting mat in there again and trace around any curves with your Stanley knife. And I'm also going to cut diagonals onto my tabs. I'm just going to use scissors for this because I feel like that's a little bit more precise for something like this. You can also use your craft knife to clean up any spaces where the washi tape has gone beyond where you want it to sit on the page, so I'm just drawing a line here quite gently, enough to cut through the washi tape but not the paper, and then just peeling up that washi tape from the area I don't want it. If you're using a journal with thinner paper, that might be actually really difficult to do, but in these 160 GSM paper journals that have much thicker paper, it's a pretty easy balance to strike. We're all finished with the tabs, which means we can get into the actual planning style stuff now. Something I love about waterfall tabs is that when they're decorated like this, they really do a lot of the heavy lifting of a theme for you because there's already so much going on. You can kind of get away with doing less on the remaining paper because there's already so much happening on that right side. I'm just adding some black paper to the left side of the left page here. This is going to be my October cover spread. It's just a fun time for me. I love having a cover spread because it's fun to set up and it helps me kind of get in the headspace of the month ahead. I want my October lettering to span from on top of the black over onto the white paper, so I'm just jumping in with a pencil to work out exactly where those things are going to sit. I also knew I wanted this lettering to have some big flourishes, particularly on the O and the cross of the T, so it definitely helps to start out on those things with pencil first. And I'm using a gold marker from ArtX to do my actual lettering here. I'm going over the line with the bullet tip end this time rather than the brush pen end, so that I can get a nice solid thick line that's around about the same thickness all the way through. Just a little bit thicker than the nib is on its own. I love all the gold gilding on the washi tapes that I've used over on the waterfall tabs, so I wanted to make sure I was bringing that gold over onto the left side of the page here as well, and we're going to do that not just with the lettering, but by also including some of the same washi tapes as I used on the waterfall tabs, and also some stickers, particularly the big candelabra sticker. It's going to be a really good one for here. Also, this is an opportunity to use some of the PET tapes from the set from Notebook Therapy because they have the clear background, so as much as they have quite a bit of an intricate design going on, the fact that they don't have a lot of visual weight means that I can really play with these without making the page look overwhelming. This is actually a pretty high contrast theme for me. I don't tend to lean towards black that often unless it is for spooky season, but once you start introducing black with lighter colors like this, you really need to be making sure that you're balancing out where you place everything, and because the black makes the left side of this spread quite heavy, I wanted to make sure we brought a little bit over to this tiny little page on the right side too, so I'm using some moon phases from Lace and Whimsy Studios just to add something a little witchy, but also something a little bit dark into that space. I should have done this part back when we were setting up the waterfall tabs after we placed the washi tape, but I love to punch the corners of my waterfall tabs so that they're nice and rounded. It makes them look like the book just came this way, like it was always intended to have these pages to be cut down shorter than the standard page width. And I also think it makes the page edges a little bit stronger because when you have a sharp edge, a sharp corner on a page, sometimes it can be more likely to get dog-eared and damaged. Moving on to this funny little narrow spread, this one's going to be a 2-page calendar, or at least what's left of the 2 pages. I am making the calendar boxes pretty narrow to make sure that it will still fit on this spread, but I think there's still enough room for the winner of this journal to write whatever they need to on each of the dates. In case you haven't watched any of my mystery journal videos before, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the project. Twice a year I get a blank journal and I fill it up with 6 months worth of bullet journal spreads. And then I run a little giveaway here on the channel and I give that journal away to somebody who enters the competition, so presumably would like it. So while I'm posting this video in early September 2024, I actually set this October theme up back in May. That's because I wanted to make sure that the journal was finished and that I had enough time to post it so that the winner of the journal could use it for the second half of this year. So yes, this one has already been won and it has been with its winner for a few months now. Just very quickly, let me show you what the grid spacing is for this in case you were doing a similar waterfall tab setup and you wanted to try this layout for yourself. I am actually already planning what I'm going to be doing for the themes in the next mystery journal giveaway, so that's something I am already working on, but the next giveaway won't open until November, so if that's something you're interested in entering, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel and stick around and watch this space. I had a little bit of room above and below my calendar here, so I thought I'd jump in with a little bit more washi tape, my very best friend in this setup clearly, and decorate the top and bottom with those, again bringing in the black to make sure that things are looking balanced with what you can see of the pages around them. That's something you have to be a little bit careful of if you're doing waterfall tabs like this and you are interested in the aesthetic of the journal. You're also completely well within your rights to not care about it if you don't want to, that's totally fine too. I left a gap above each of the weeks so I could put the number for each day of the week in those spaces, and I wanted those to stand out a little bit too, so I'm using that same gold marker, but this time with the brush end so that I can fill in this space a little bit more efficiently. If you're really worried when you're using a paint marker or even just a regular water-based brush tip marker about having really straight lines, then instead of freehanding it like me, you can add some washi tape down to mask off the area. I wasn't feeling up to that this time, I was feeling pretty steady-handed on this day, and so we went for it and I think it looks good. October ends on a Thursday, which means there's a little bit of a space at the bottom of the calendar, perfectly filled in by a hand with tarot card sticker. How good is that? And now that the brush tip marker there, the gold, has had time to dry down, I'm jumping in with one of my Pigma microns, this one's the 01, and just adding the numbers above each line so that our winner of the journal knows exactly which day they're looking at. I'm also adding a little reference for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday along the top, just with some tiny hand lettering too. With the calendar ready to go, we can turn the page again and move on to our next spread. Setting up the mystery journal can sometimes be a little bit tricky because clearly this book is not for me, and because it's a giveaway, I also don't know who it's going to be for at the time I'm setting it up, but I love a challenge. I also want to make sure I'm not giving something to the winner of this journal in one month and then taking it away in a subsequent month, so I want them to have the same tools available to them all the way throughout the journal, which is why I'm including the exact same pages each month. I'm just setting them up a little bit differently so that I can demonstrate for you some different ways that you can make the same functional thing happen on your page, but make it look and feel very different each time. The page we're working on right now is the Currently page, which has 4 boxes that are each for a little bit of a self-reflection kind of interesting little snapshot of who you are at any given month. On the right is the 1 line a day page, which is maybe more like half a line this month because the page is so much shorter, but that's okay, we can be concise, can't we, winner of journal? How great is this washi tape? Look at how beautifully I can just quickly slap down 1 to 31 there and I've got the whole month ready to go. Clearly not feeling very linear setting this one up, I keep bouncing backwards and forwards between the pages, but we're going to add some headings over here on the Currently section. So aiming is for setting goals, loving is for anything that you're enjoying and appreciating that month, feeling is obviously for how you're feeling about everything in your life at that time, and practicing is for anything that you're actively working on. Over the other page on the 1 line a day section, I've left this pretty open. It can just be 1 line about the thing that you did that day, something that stood out to you. It can be a gratitude log if that's what you're into. I've left it open to interpretation for our winner, but I always like when I'm doing a list kind of setup like this to jump in with a really light marker and highlight every second line so that it's just very easy and clear to see where you're up to exactly. You can barely see that Tombow on screen. It's the 800 baby pink. It's very, very soft, but in real life, it looks so good. Obviously, when you're setting up a spread like this one, you need to leave yourself space to write on it and fill it in later. So I'm going for some very tiny stickers just in the corners and tucked into little nooks here to decorate around the place and make it still feel like a consistent and cute theme without eating into the actual planning space so that the spread is still very functional. I'm also adding some more pink on the left side so that it balances out the pink a little bit from the waterfall tabs on the right. Here's the grid spacing in case you want to borrow this layout as well. Onward to the next spread. On the left page here, we're adding some trackers. These can be for habits, these can be for whatever you like to track that you may need to track. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything besides habits, but that doesn't mean that there aren't millions of other things that you could track with these. I'm laying them out in the form of 6 tiny calendars, so the bottom section is where the numbers will go, the top section is for the initial for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc., and for the name of whatever the thing is that the person who uses this journal will plan to track there. So each time they do the thing, whatever it is that they've assigned, or each time the thing happens, if they're keeping track of something that isn't necessarily related to them, a thing that they have to do, then they can just colour in the number or circle the number or scratch out the number, put a cross through it, whatever feels good, just to record that the thing has happened. If you've ever tried to keep up a Duolingo or a Snapchat streak, you might understand the don't break the chain method of building habits, where it kind of plays on the sunk cost fallacy a little bit, I guess, where if you're recording every time you do the thing and you can see in some kind of visual representation that you have done the thing every day for a long time, you'll want to continue doing the thing and colouring it in or crossing it off, whatever it is, so that you don't break the chain. Basically, you don't ruin it for yourself because you've done it for so long already. Does that make sense? Writing out all these tiny numbers can sometimes be a little bit crampy on the fingers, but I don't mind it. I think it looks really nice once we're done. And I've deliberately left some space in between the rows of the habit tracker boxes here so that I could add some of this adorable little thin PET tape here, because it's so cute. It's got tiny crystals on it. Quite often, if I'm doing 2 different purposes across 2 pages, sharing a single spread like this, I like to continue some of the decoration from the left page over onto the right so that they really look linked and cohesive. I'm not quite ready to start working on the right page yet, but I wanted to make sure that I continued that washi over while I was using it, partly so that I would remember, and partly just because it was already in my hands. On the right page is a spending tracker, so this one is basically just a table. It has 3 columns and each of those columns stand for different things. The first column is the largest, it is for writing down the item that money was spent on. The second column is for assigning that item to a category, which relates to some trackers back at the beginning of this journal. If you want to check out the initial setup pages with the big kind of 6 monthly trackers, you can do that at the link in the description. And the last column on the right is for cost, so just how much the thing cost. I'm a really big believer that financial literacy is super important, so this is something I feel like is a really good addition to something like a mystery journal, because if you've never tracked your spending to see where your money really goes, it can be quite eye-opening. I'm also the kind of person who just loves watching savings accounts grow, so there is that too. Here are the grid spacing details for both of these pages. It's a little tricky to see with the waterfall tabs, but I'm doing my best. Thanks for bearing with me. We'll use some tiny little stickers to fill in some gaps, and then we will move on again to the next spread. Now, I mentioned this journal is not for me, and that planning for an unknown mystery person can be tricky, hence the name Mystery Journal, which was a suggestion from one of you guys. To prevent this journal from being good but not quite for the person who wins it, I always like to include a spare spread in each of these layouts. So it's decorated, but it still has lots of space on the page for the winner of the journal to add anything else that they would like to include that maybe I didn't consider, things that I have overlooked. I always like to try and decorate these ones somewhat minimally so that there's lots of page space left over, but they don't have to put the effort in to decorate it unless they want to. And if they don't have anything else that they want to include, I've sent a selection of the stationery that I've used to set up all of the layouts for this journal along with the book, so they can just make this a pretty junk journal page. They can put their favorite quote of the moment, they could just write a long form journal entry here. Like, the opportunities are endless. The last of our monthly spreads before we get stuck into weeklies over where those tabs are is the reflection spread, and this is a place for coming back to at the end of the month and kind of looking at how things went, comparing that with how you thought things would go, and just seeing how it all lined up. This is a very kind of mental health, self-care-y kind of journaling moment. It goes somewhat with the currently page that we did earlier, where those are the things that you're enjoying, those are the things that you're vibing. This is where you might want to come back and be not more critical necessarily, but a little bit more realistic. For this one, I'm dividing the spread into 4 columns, so 2 on each page, 2 on the left page and 2 on the right page. I'm adding a nice solid gold line at the top here that I'm going to use to put headings in, and then we'll divide the page up with some lines as well, just with the nice fine Sakura Pigma Micron. And I'm trying to leave quite a bit of space for the winner to add their own text here so that it really is a functional reflection spread. Sometimes you need a decent amount of room to write these things out. Let's have a little chat about the 4 different reflection areas that I'm listing out on the headings here. The first is for highlights, so anything that went really well in the month, anything that you really enjoyed, those are the highlights. Successes are anything that you achieved, accomplished. The next one is going to have learnings, things that you didn't know before this month that now you do. And the last one is to work on, which is a little bit similar to the practicing section from the currently page earlier, but this is maybe the things that I didn't do so well this month that I think I could work on next month. This is something I really struggle with. I don't do a lot of reflecting, but it is a really beneficial thing to do in your journal and in your life generally, so definitely something that I encourage even though I don't necessarily completely practice what I preach here. The reflection spread is set up and ready to go, and here are its measurements in case you want to duplicate it for your own journal. Otherwise, we're going to turn the page and move on to our very first weekly spread. I was going for some offset boxes here, so rather than just having 4 boxes next to each other on each of the pages, I wanted to make some a little bit higher, some a little bit lower, but I didn't plan this one out very well, and so they've ended up slightly different sizes, slightly different heights. It's a little higgledy-piggledy, but with the power of decorating magic, we're going to make it all look balanced, and at the end, maybe you won't even really notice how very wonky I set this one up. You'll see when we get to the grid spacing guide, but basically the second column on the left page there is 1 box narrower than the others. I didn't line up the boxes on the right to match the ones on the left, like it's just a bit all over the place. So sorry about that. If you decide to replicate this one, maybe you can fix it. By offsetting the boxes though, I've made these little pockets. So like there's a pocket on the left side of both pages, there's a pocket on the top right side of both pages. That's an opportunity to add some decoration, and because we've got black on the left and black on the right of this spread, I really wanted to make sure that we were bringing in some pink. I'm also finally getting a chance to use the day of the week washi tape from Maisie Lane Studios as well. This is so quick and easy, although mine started on the Friday part of the roll, so for each one of the spreads that we set up for the weeklies together, I'm probably always going to start sticking the Friday down first, just because that's the part of the washi tape that is closest for me at the time. Waste not, right? And because I've got 8 boxes, I thought we'd do a notes section. I just put down some of the washi that didn't have anything on it, and I've used a white paint marker to just letter notes on top to try and make it fit as best I could. That paint marker doesn't really dry down so well on the washi tape though, as I found out the hard way. So something I've worked out that I need to do in this instance is it's almost acting like chalk on a chalkboard, right? It just sort of scratches off. So I am going to start sticking some clear sticky tape down over the top of that to make sure those letters stay in place. I haven't quite worked that out yet though at the part that we're watching now, so you'll see when I have that little epiphany and we start adding the clear tape. Look at that. With the decoration, can you even tell that I set it all up really wonky? I feel like it really does carry it a little bit to add some stickers and some washi tape and then just be like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. It was all a dream. Let's turn the page and move on to the next one. This one has more of a classic all the boxes in line kind of a shape. But I'm going to have the bottoms of the top boxes and the tops of the bottom boxes disappear into this strip of decoration that goes through the middle of the page. Now that I've got the basis for the pretty through the center of the page down, let's jump in with the ruler and the fine liner and just add the boxes and see how these lines are kind of just disappearing into the decoration. I wanted to make sure I decorated first so that if the washi tape was a little translucent, you wouldn't see those lines through the tape. Here's the grid spacing in case you want to try it yourself. Next, we add some more of the day of the week washi tape. And again, I've made 8 boxes on the page here, so it's nice and symmetrical, which means one of them is going to be designated for notes. I've just realised as I've gone to number the next weekly that I put a 7 on the note section here, which I did not need to do, but my white paint marker is excellent for fixing mistakes as well. And look at this, we're finally working it out. If you just put some tape over top, you're not going to lose your notes lettering anymore. Love that for me. We've done essentially 2 vertically oriented box type weeklies, so let's move on to a horizontal one instead, mix it up a little bit. So this time I'm dividing the page into 4 horizontally. That can be a little tricky in your typical A5 dot grid journal. Just going to round out some corners here that I missed earlier, because when you have 38 dot grid spaces from top to bottom and you want to divide it by 4, that means each section has to be 9.5 dot grid spaces tall. And that means you need to draw your lines in a couple of places in between the dot grids, which can be a little uncomfortable, but it's fine, it's not the end of the world. I did it for this one and I think it looks plenty okay. I'm going to add a little bit of decoration in alternate sides of each of these weekly spaces, so we've got somewhere to put that washi tape over the top with the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, bring in some of the pink, bring in some of the black, but still have heaps of space on the weekly for planning out to-do lists or keeping track of events and all of that good stuff that happens on weeklies. I love the way the day of the week stickers with their blackness just bring in that instant little bit of the theme. It's so good. There's the grid spacing. There are a lot of weeks in October this year. It just is the way that the calendar fell. I always like to have, say, you know, some of the week falls into one month and some of it falls into the next month. I always like to have the part of the week that has more days fall into the layout that corresponds. I don't know if that made any sense whatsoever, but say if the 1st and the 2nd are on a Thursday and Friday, and the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday fall in the previous month, because there are 4 days of that week in the new month, that is the layout that I would put that weekly in, if that makes sense. Anyway, we're going with something a little bit more loose and free this time. This one's going to be a radial weekly, which I haven't done in ages. Basically, you add your decoration in the center of the spread, and then you leave the space for all of the weeklies around the left and right sides. And I'm also going to do some decoration at the top and bottom too, because I simply cannot leave well enough alone. Ideally, I think this kind of weekly works best for someone who doesn't set their journal up ahead of time. You just start with Monday and you use as much space as you need for Monday, and then you do Tuesday and you use as much space as you need for Tuesday, and so on and so forth. But I'm setting up this journal for the person and I want to be able to demonstrate things for you, so I kind of just eyeballed it. We're not doing a notes section this time. We've got 4 days on the right, 3 on the left. I'm not giving you grid spacing because I completely made it up, but I hope you got something out of that anyway. We're moving on to the next one. Our last weekly for this setup. This one is my typical Ruthie box layout that I love, that's been adapted a little bit to leave more space at the top and bottom for decoration. The idea here is you're dividing the page into 2 vertical columns and 3 horizontal rows. You're leaving space to plan, but you're also kind of leaving some irregular little boxies to put some pretty decoration in. I'm using my pink marker again to offset every second line here, although you can really almost not see it at all on screen. I added clear tape over the notes again here, but I needed to take off some of it so I could get my marker on the page, so sometimes I put things down, I have to immediately peel them back up. I really like using this every second line marker system though as an alternative to putting everything in boxes, because this way you can leave it a little bit more open, but it's still clear where you're supposed to be doing your writing on the page. And the best part, adding all of our washi tapes, all of our stickers. I've used this particular weekly layout a few times now, and every time it looks completely different. It's like a completely different spread, even if the spacing is the same. The way you decorate it really changes the way it feels, and I love it so much for that. Allow me to share with you the grid spacing for this one of my most favourite of weeklies, and with that we have actually finished setting up the mystery journal for October, although because of that extra little piece of washi at the back here, we've just got like a blank page after. Let's flip through it from start to finish and see how this theme really came together. It's witchy, but it's girly, it's black, but it's pink, it's gold gilded, it's romantic, it's celestial. I love it. I hope you've had a good time setting it up with me, and I hope the winner of this journal loves using this month. Something I love about the mystery journal for the second half of the year is that it means I get to do spooky season in my journal twice. It's so exciting. If you've made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you so much for sticking around. Make sure you leave me a crystal ball emoji in your comment down below so that I know you made it all the way to the end. I have a few more spooky season themed videos coming your way through September, so I hope that you will stick around and look forward to those. I also have discount codes for quite a few of the stores whose items I've used in this video, so make sure you check out the description for those codes too. If you're vibing the witchy theme but you're not feeling the pink, there is a link on the screen at the moment for you for my October theme from last year, as well as a link to another video YouTube thinks you will enjoy. Choose your own adventure and I'll meet you there.